a daisy. Oh no, drop one. Oh,
he's digging his nut up.
Digging. Look, he's looking for his nut. Oh, he's going off again.
He forgot.
Yeah.
Yarny Book Cub.
Yarny Book Cub.
Sounds like a bear who likes to read books.
Oh, yeah, that would be lovely.
And
wouldn't
it
it?
was a suede leather with tassels.
Oh, fringe.
Yeah, fringe. It was about that length. It was about that.
And as he did so, a voice rang out from the galleries. You don't... No.
Hook in the corner near the door was his jacket, and he was away for the weekend, so I thought,
I'm going to wear that.
I shall pop it on and I shall go for a strut around
From
you.
the other flank. But... No, don't waffle. Don't waffle. I've not got time to
So I
waffle.
did. So I put it on.
I can just see you thinking you were the bee's knees.
Do you know what I look like? You know the scene?
Yeah.
Is it Staying Alive?
Yes.
With John Travolta?
Yes.
The scene where he walks past Sylvester Stallone
Yeah,
and he turns
yeah,
around
yeah.
and looks at him. Welcome, everybody, to the Bakery Bears video show featuring the final episode of England, a Castle Nation.
Oh, are you excited?
What a year it's been. So many wonderful series. We've had the Yarny Book Club, which we've already said goodbye to.
Yeah.
We've had Kay's Classic Bakes, which has already gone the journey. What's that expression? You hear that expression? Have you heard that before? He's gone the journey.
the journey. I think so.
I don't know if that's northern.
Northern. What do you mean by northern?
Is it a northern expression?
No,
Right.
not particularly. I don't remember hearing it
Just in the north?
growing up. No.
Right.
Gone the journey.
Yeah.
I
Anyway,
don't know.
who knows?
Who knows?
British speech. I mean, it's like... I just put out a self-contained list yesterday and I was touching on some of the words that Bryony was teaching us.
Oh,
Because
right.
she was on about the Riz, wasn't she?
Yeah, what does that mean?
They've got charisma.
Oh, right.
And also there's now the expression chef's kiss.
What's that?
That means it's... mwah.
Oh, gosh.
I know, it's awful,
I
isn't
can't
it?
stand these things.
No, I know, it's terrible. It's terrible. I mean...
We're not up with the current things, are we?
Well, it's so silly. Why say chef's kiss? Why not just go... Oh, it was... Because, you know...
It's just
If you're that type of person, surely it's more fun to go... mwah.
Yeah, so they don't actually do that. They just
No.
say it's the chef's kiss.
Yes.
Right, okay.
I don't know.
Young people. Who knows?
So, yes, we've said goodbye to Yarny Book Cub.
Yeah.
Yarny Book Cub.
Yarny Book Cub.
Sounds like a bear who likes to read books.
Oh, yeah, that would be lovely,
And
wouldn't
knit.
it? In his cave, snuggled up for the winter with a big stack of books.
Now, that's just...
Maybe that's what they do.
That sounds like Macca now.
Maybe they don't hibernate. Maybe bears actually educate themselves through the winter.
Out of all the children's programmes, the character that I miss the most is definitely Macca.
Macca.
Cleaning his stones.
Yes.
Genius character development, I must say. If you don't know what we're talking about, just go onto YouTube and put in Macca.
Put in Macca.
And see what comes up. I promise you, you'll love it.
You will.
We were listening to... Of course, we love the radio now. I know we sound so silly, don't we?
We love the radio.
Yes, it is. And
Makes us sound old just saying that.
We were listening to Absolute Radio 80s. And they were talking... Now, we do not watch horror films.
No.
And they were talking about horror films. And what was the film that woman said she watched? And she was so scared she had to watch 5 episodes of Hey Dougie to calm down.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter really what the scary film was.
I can't remember what the scary film was.
But evidently, and I would agree,
Yeah.
if you are feeling, tense and if you are feling scared, then just pop on Hey Dougie.
Hey Dougie is another one. It's the most excellent programme.
In just a moment, you'll be fast asleep. But no, look, it is the end of England, a Castle Nation.
Yeah.
And my goodness, what an end.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the end. It's the end of an era. And I don't mean the series. As the castle dies, it is the end of an old way that the world used to operate. But, like we always say when a series ends, there is a chance for a new beginning. And those of you who know us well now, to be fair, last year I think was the first time we'd ever done this. Did we do it the year before? I can't remember.
Yeah. Oh, no, did we? I don't know.
No, we didn't.
We
Of course
did
we
it
didn't.
last year. Yeah, you did
Last
it last
year was the first year.
Yeah.
Last year was the first year, and we'd raised the bar last year to being able to develop and reveal next year's series as this one finished. And you'll have to wait and see later on in the show if we manage to continue that tradition. Speaking of exciting times, as you will have noticed, we have lost a daughter. No, that sounds wrong. Our daughter has gone to university recently, but she came home for the weekend.
She did.
Oh, my goodness.
She came home last weekend. It was so lovely.
It was insane.
It was really weird, you know. She's only been gone a month. Well, I say only, but, you know, it's a long time when you've had your daughter there every single day of her life,
It really
virtually, you know.
Yeah.
A month does seem a long time. And she loved it. She loved being home. It's a weird thing, isn't it, you know, because we'd kind of adjusted a little bit to the house being just us. And then Bryony comes barreling in and, you know, all of a sudden the house felt really full again, and you know, chatter and talk and all the excitement. It was lovely. It was super lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, she's changed though, which is so nice, because
yeah, she's definitely changed
in so many ways. But it's lovely. Any parent, grandparent, you know, you all know, don't you, that sort of moment when your child properly grows up and becomes.
Yeah, she's definitely on that path.
Which is just lovely to sort of witness and to see. And it was a real joy. You know, it was just a joy for me to go and pick her up. And, you know, it's quite a trek, but I just loved it. I loved it, every bit of it. And it's interesting how your perspective changes about, you know, life, how something which at one time would have felt like a chore actually felt like a completely joyous experience, because, you know, you're going to get your daughter. Or it might be your son or your grandson or your granddaughter, or who knows. But you're going to get that person and you're bringing them home. But then taking her back was also, you know, it was a joy as well.
Yeah, and she was fine going back, wasn't she? She stayed 3 nights here and then went back. And she was totally fine going back. And, of course, she brought all her laundry, which I loved.
You told her to.
I did tell her to.
Yes.
You know, everybody keeps saying to me, oh, they'll be bringing their laundry home, as if it's like a bad thing.
No.
I loved it.
But also, she has been brilliant. You know, I've seen it now firsthand. You know, I walked into a flat and it was...
After a month, yeah.
And it was great, you know.
She's been cleaning the bathroom and she's been doing her laundry.
So...
And, you know, all is... And feeding herself and, you know... And she's not been eating rubbish either.
No.
Not at all, you know.
So every doubt that we had was all for nothing. We're fools. I mean, talk about excitement. All that. And this has been Sockoween month.
Yes, indeed.
And what a month.
It's just come to an end. It's just flipped over a new month, hasn't it? So, yeah, Sockoween has just ended and it's been fantastic this year.
Well,
yeah,
I mentioned
brilliant.
my self-contained knitter, which finished Sockoween off on the 31st. And, you know, I said on that show I felt very lucky to be there, because you'd been carrying the torch through Sockoween with your Amazing Incantation Sock series.
Yeah.
But then also everyone else, you know, the whole community sort of coming together, knitting all these wonderful socks.
It's been so brilliant.
And we had a lovely patron exclusive show, you know, as part of Sockoween just the other weekend. And Bryony actually came on that, which was quite fun.
She did for a few minutes, yeah.
So that was really lovely, a sort of lovely way to sort of bring Sockoween to a conclusion. And it's totally, I don't know about UK, but it's transformed October for me, because...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, October's always been a favourite month of mine, because it's your birthday, it's Bryony's birthday, all in October, and it's autumn and all of those vibes. But
walking around, you know, the world gets very focused on Halloween, and it's not something that we ever really got.
No. And it's funny, we were walking around a couple of days ago. Well, we went to the post office, didn't we, which is a little bit of a walk, and we were seeing all these houses decorated for Halloween, but not decorated in a way that I remember. For the few people that did when when we were younger, you know, it wasn't really a thing. But the most people really ever did was put maybe a pumpkin outside their house, or.
Oh yeah.
But now, you know, it's very
gruesome.
It's very gruesome, and I'm not down with that at all. You know, there's like coffins in the garden and massive spider webs with these terrifying spiders, blood dripping, and all of. I am not a fan of that.
That's what led us to Halloween not being something that we particularly enjoyed. But then we started doing the Sockoween thing, and it just transformed it all.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's made it now that I look on the whole month with great excitement.
Yeah.
And, it's just been wonderful. So thanks to everyone
Yes,
who was involved in that lovely
absolutely.
Sockaween event. And next time
next time I'm going to announce the prizes on the next show.
Now, whilst Sockaween was a patron event, and we'll be drawing prizes next time for that, there will also be next time the opportunity for all viewers to win prizes, and there'll be more about that later on. So yes, Sockaween has now come to an end, but now it's time to start getting excited for Christmas.
Absolutely.
I know that sounds silly, but it isn't, is it? Because it's November.
I know.
And we all know what Christmas means. Yes, it means the Baker Bears Advent Calendar. And there'll be more about that later on in the show.
Yes.
Now, though, it's time for us to find out, Kate Jones, what's on your needles?
Oh, very exciting things. So the first thing on my needles is my absolute new obsession, everybody. I am completely obsessed with this yarn. So I was on Wool Warehouse the other day, like you do, and I don't know why I was on there. Anyway.
To buy yarn, maybe?
Very possibly. But sometimes I just go on for a look because I just like looking at all the yarn. But I looked in the What's New section, which I haven't done for quite some time, actually. And this yarn popped up. I saw this yarn and I was like, oh, what's that? So I went and had a look, and it's a drops yarn. And I looked at the sort of particulars of it, and I was like, oh my goodness. And the colourways just looked, really lovely, really pretty. There's some really pretty ones. So I thought, oh, I'm going to try that. And this particular sock yarn is this one. It's called Drops Fiesta, and there's sort of solids and then there's prints as well. But it's a superwash treated sock wool, but it's DK weight. I said that like Detroit Lions, didn't I? It's DK weight. And I was all over it. It was the colours really that drew me in, but also I'm always on the lookout for a good DK weight sock yarn because it's not a common thing, I don't think. So this one is just brilliant. So yeah, it's Drops Fiesta. It comes in 50 gram balls. So it's a 75-25, so 75 superwash merino, 25% nylon, and you get, there's print small. It's 120 metres. No, it's not. It's 120 yards, 110 metres per 50 grams. Yeah, I ordered some. Now, when I say I ordered 2 different print colourways and then 1 solid, which is the ones that you will have seen. I've since ordered a bunch more, and I'll show you those in Endy Bits. But the one that I'm knitting with right now is colourway number 14. It's this beautiful one. Isn't it just gorgeous? And it was called, I think it's called Rainbow Sprinkles, I think. Now, I have noticed when I went back on to order some more, there are a few colourways that are now sold out. I think this is one of them, and there are a couple of the other printed ones I think that are sold out. But I'm sure Wool Warehouse will restock at some point, and I don't know if it's available elsewhere. I mean, if you look around, I'm sure other places must stock it. But yeah, so this one's sold out. So I am sorry that I'm showing you something that I don't know whether currently you can get. But I got this pink to go with it. And this one is number 11. It was called Cerise. Just a gorgeous, quite a hot pink. And I'm knitting a pair of socks. And yeah, I'm obsessed with this yarn. So I finished a sock really quickly because, one, I like short socks, so it's it is quite a short sock, but also because it's DK weight, it just knits up so quick. But this is the one that I've finished. Oh, and isn't it lovely? It knits up so nice, this yarn. It's just so pretty. So I used a 3.25mm needle and cast on 48 stitches, which is the equivalent of a 64 stitch in fingering weight. And then I just did a short 2x2 rib, and then I think I just did 18 rounds for the leg here. So I think I did 8 for the cuff, 18 for the leg. I put in my butterfly heel. There isn't actually a pattern currently available for a DK weight version of the butterfly heel, but it's really easy to adapt. And, you know, I thought, well, I'll just give it a try and see what it looks like. And I think it's great. And I've tried this on and it fits perfect. And then I put in my, I did say butterfly heel, didn't I? Yes, butterfly heel, and I put in my umbrella toe. Now, the umbrella toe for DK weight, there is a pattern. The Choose Your House socks is a DK weight pair of socks. It comes in 3 sizes and it has this toe. It's got a different heel. It's just got a standard sort of heel flap. So yeah, just a plain vanilla sock. But honestly, I think I knit this in like 2 days. It was so quick. And the second one, I'm actually not far off finishing this. I'm hoping to get it done this afternoon because I want to start another colour. So I'm this far now on the second one. I think when you saw it in the picture a minute ago, or you might be looking at it now, I'd literally only just cast this on yesterday afternoon, and I'm now here. So this is how quick they are. Now, the thing that's making this a particular joy, it's a combination really. The yarn actually is great. I am going to be doing a review of this yarn. I love it. It's not like Felici. You know, if you think of like a Knit Picks Felici, that super soft sock yarn, it's not like that. It does have a bit of tooth, which I think is great. I wonder if it's like a DK version of maybe their Fable yarn. So yeah, it might be, but I mean, I can't remember. I haven't felt Drops Fable in quite some time, so I can't make a direct comparison. It's soft to the sort of squish, but there is a bit of a, you know, you can definitely feel a bit of a tiny prickle, but not anything awful. You know, I think it'll be perfectly lovely to wear on your foot. But I think having that bit of a bit of gutso to it, if you know what I mean, it will be brilliant for socks. It feels like it'll be really hard wearing. And it's just so lovely to knit with. But the other thing that's making it so pleasant to knit is the needles that I'm using. And I'm also going to be doing a review on these because I've used these needles before for DK weight socks and really enjoyed them, but never done a review. So I'm going to be doing that. I've ordered another pair actually. I've ordered some from Tribe Yarns. You can get these, and there were a few other places as well I found when I googled it. But they are Chaogu bamboo double pointed needles, 6-inch. They are, I mean, I love wooden needles. I've said this loads of times before, haven't I? But these ones are just perfect. They're smooth. They're grippy, obviously, because they're wooden, but they're not too grippy. They're just perfect. You know, if you were new to sock knitting and you wanted to try double points, I would always recommend wooden needles. And bamboo is, I think, the grippiest of the wood needles that you can get. It's got that kind of, it's not a texture, is it? When you think of bamboo, it has like sort of striations through it, doesn't it? And that gives it quite a nice grip. But they're lovely and smooth. The points are absolutely, you know, fine. I think you would be fine working lace even with these points. So it's an absolutely perfect sock project. Now, I'm still using the first 50-gram ball, but I don't know if I'll get away with this being enough for this sock. I did weigh how much yarn I'd got left after the first sock. So I've just done a heel and toe in contrast, and I had 25 grams exactly left, but the ball weighed like 53. So I think I will need to just break into this second ball, but that's fine. I'd rather have most of a 50-gram ball left than like 2 bits of 50 grams left, if you know what I mean. Because what you can do, I suppose, is if you've got a few colours of this, when you've knit a few pairs with them, your leftovers, you could do like a scrappy pair, couldn't you? That'd be fun. So I think I will have to break into this second ball. I suspect that I might end up using 55, 60 grams of the main colour, and then I'm not sure really. I've got loads of this left, not too much of this one. Maybe I've used 10 grams, if that. So no more than 20 grams, I don't think, of the contrast. And it's just so lovely. I posted a picture of these on Instagram, so I know that it's attracted some attention, this yarn. Quite rightly, it's so pretty. And I think the thing I love is how it's knitted up, because you never know, do you, with yarns like this that are sort of speckly and, would I class it as a variegated? I don't think I would. I don't know. It's more a speckle, isn't it? But you just never know how they're going to knit up. And I couldn't be more thrilled, really. So pretty. So these will definitely be finished for next time. And I'm sure I'll have another pair on the needles then. So, Dan Jones, what's on your needles?
It's a jumper. And it's been such a journey because I suppose if ever there was a sort of lesson in to go with what's in your head ahead of what you get swayed towards, because as if you've seen recent shows, you'll have known that I was looking for a new, not cables, but knit and pearl texture-y,
Gansy
stuff going on, yeah. And we came to the conclusion the right thing to do was to go with a designer who I knew, not personally, although Michelle Wong, if you want to meet up for coffee anytime,
that would be lovely.
Give us a shout. So it seemed to make the most sense to do that because don't you, how they teach, and that the way the pattern's laid out, and all the sort of ingredients, so you've got a good idea that it's going to work for you. So got the pattern, and the pattern recommended a certain type of yarn. We ended up getting something similar to that. And
we didn't like.
Long story short, so got rid of that yarn. Kay then said, well, you should just use Cascade 220, which she got me some in the perfect sort of Gansy blue.
It's called Midnight Heather.
Because if you think about it, half the thing, I mean, granted, this is not a Gansy, but it's a step towards one, because I'm using the same sorts of basic techniques. And it for me, it felt like the right step, in that direction. And also, it was like my first time doing this type of jumper in a little while. The last time I did anything like this, I suppose, was probably the Cascades. That's too long ago. I did a good chunk of work like this because I'd done the Cascades. I'd also done the Samantha, which I loved. And I'd also done the Irish Coffee. And I don't know why. Well, I do know why I stopped doing them, because I became obsessed with the yoked jumpers and covered this in depth in the Self-Contained Knitted episode that just came out. Don't get me wrong, I love colourwork yoke jumpers, and I'll always want to knit one because I just enjoy it. I think a lot of it is the yarn, because the yarn, whilst you're only going round and round and round, it knits up in a really sort of interesting way. Also, as well, what always keeps me engaged is when I have to think about my technique. And when you're using Let Lopi, the yarn tends to go from being robust and strong to weak and, very sort of thin. But it's not that it's thin, it's unspun. It's like cotton wool.
It's thick and thin. It's very textural.
And when it goes thick, it's weak, because that's where it's unspun.
Yes.
And when I first started knitting with Let Lopi, I would break it all the time.
Yeah.
So actually, having to think about your technique and still be able to knit in such a way where you get an even looking, finished piece, it is engaging. But actually, I've come to the conclusion.
It's really beautiful.
That this is where it's at for me. I want to knit. The reason why this project is perfect for me, the reason why the Cascades was perfect for me, is because the front and the back, whilst are similar, are different. And it's not about it being really challenging stitches, which it was on the Cascades. It's actually just about it being different. If it's different, then I don't get bored. And the other thing that I love about these types of designs is I think it's brilliant the way that Michelle Wong, and I'm sure there'll be lots of other designers who do this, but on the changeover between the front and the back, there's just a little something that's happening.
It's like a faux seam, isn't it, up the side?
There's just stuff there that it frames the work. It also gives it more shape, and also as well, she stuck a band across the bottom as well.
Yeah, there's a garter band here at the bottom that Dan started.
It's really
with.
clever.
Yeah,
it's really clever. And I remember when we spoke about designs, I think it was on it wasn't a pop show, on a Patreon exclusive show, we were talking about how you find designers. And a lot of people were talking about how, what you mustn't do is you mustn't streamline yourself so you don't look at new designers, because there's great new designers out there. Well, in our sort of journey, he's back. He's back. The squirrel is back.
Oh my gosh.
Last episode, this is insane. The squirrel is in the spot where he went to last time.
Is he looking for his nut? Oh
he's
my
digging
gosh,
his nut up.
Digging. Look, he's looking for his nut. Oh, he's going off again.
He forgot. He dug in the wrong spot.
He did dig in the wrong spot. He was too far that way.
How?
Oh, he's gone. Oh.
This is insanity. Because...
he's so fluffy.
But that's 2 weeks ago.
I know.
It's the same day. The squirrel comes back on the same day.
Spooky, isn't it?
At sort of the same time.
Yeah.
To dig up his nut.
That's amazing. He didn't find it. Oh, he needs to go back.
I'd go and show him. But
we'll show him where it is. He'd run off. Oh.
He forgot. He was close.
He was really close.
He didn't really look very far, though,
he
did he?
didn't. No, he didn't
just
give
had a
it
bit
much of a dig.
Oh.
Yeah, he needs to get
Wrong
back
garden.
there.
Wrong garden. So the long and short of it is, I am totally in love with patterns like Samantha, Cascades, Albion.
So this is the Albion,
This is
isn't
the
it?
Albion,
Yeah.
and it's the business.
It's lovely.
I absolutely love it. And it makes me more confident now as I work towards... because what I don't want to do... I know a Ganzi is a challenge, because when I do a Ganzi, I want to do it on DPNs. And, that's why I work so hard on the DPNs, and now I'm getting this textual work back up. And I want to be able to sort of attack it knowing I can do... because I'll be honest, I know it's simple, this, but it still has taken me a bit of time to get back into the groove of... because I'm
like
so used
a sort
to...
of zigzaggy sort of thing, just with knits and pearls, but it's absolutely lovely. It's going to be such a fantastic
She's such
garment.
a great designer.
And, I mean, you said you were really enjoying the Cascade 220,
Oh, it's
didn't you?
great.
Yeah.
This is great. The stuff I was knitting with before, what was the stuff before? Primrose yarns.
Primrose yarn.
Really
it was
not
like
great.
it was the same base of Brooklyn Tweed. Was it Shelter? I think it's the same base as that, and we didn't like it, did we?
No, this is great. This for me, you can just get on with it, and it behaves in a way that you would expect.
It's a really good, straightforward, reliable yarn.
That's great. That's what you want, isn't it?
Yeah, and your ribbon looks beautiful. And
Well, it always has.
It was a mess with
Since the dawn
with that
of
other
time,
yarn.
my ribbing has always looked
his ribbon
good.
looks beautiful, doesn't it?
So, I'm afraid that's a sort of deal breaker for me. But I'm not throwing out the idea of not having a go with that again with something.
No, we've still,
I'm going to do something with it.
Yeah.
We'll wait and see what it is. Who knows?
And we're using... I think we might have gone up a needle size.
Yeah,
I think we
half.
did.
Yeah. So it's half a... So I cast on...
with 3.5, and you're now using 3.75.
Yeah, something like that.
And I think it was a size down, wasn't it, recommended?
Yeah.
But it looks great.
Yeah, I got confused then because I've also been knitting on
Your other one.
my Godi, and I'm like, oh no.
That's a bigger needle on that one.
Yeah, I was
isn't it?
panicking. I was thinking, I should have changed needles. But then I'm like, no, it's fine.
You did change needles,
I did.
didn't you?
Yes, I did, because I slipped them over.
And I think the thing about using a slightly smaller needle size as well is, that your ribbon looks so tidy. And I think generally stitchers do look tidier if you're using a needle size that really is appropriate for that thickness of yarn. I think it's become really fashionable, or I feel it's sort of become a bit fashionable to use quite big needle sizes for things so that you get a very airy and open fabric.
No thanks.
I much prefer, especially if it was a garment, I much prefer it to have quite a nice tight gauge, because it's going to wear better, it's going to look better. My mum used to call it, it'll look sloppy. And I've always had that in my head, I always like my stitches to look really nice and tidy. And if you are having that problem where you think your stitches look a bit wibbly, just try going down a needle size, and you might find that really helps neaten everything up.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What else is on your needles?
Oh, the socks that I just spoke about before, they were a new cast on.
Thank you very much.
My next project is also a new cast on. So I am knitting a hat. gosh, I mean, this has taken some starting, this hat, let me tell you, because I just couldn't find a pattern that was going to work. However, I think this one looks good. Now, I'm knitting a hat for Dan because
That's me.
This is Dan, and he wanted a new hat.
This is Jonathan.
This is Jonathan. We've not watched it for ages, have we?
Oh, it's on. We're waiting for Journey Day.
We're waiting for our Journey anniversary, Discovery
28th
Day.
of January,
Yeah.
2025, the first Journey Day.
We're just going to watch loads of Journey stuff. Yeah, so Dan wanted a new hat, and he wanted it to coordinate with what he's going to wear for his new series next year, which you will get a little view of what he's going to be wearing next year. Maybe. So yeah, he wanted a hat to coordinate with that. So I actually looked through my stash and I found a yarn that was absolutely perfect, and it just happened to be in my stash. So I'm using Malabrigo Rios, which is worsted weight. It's a lovely yarn. We've used this a little bit recently, haven't we, the Rios? And this was one of the yarns that I bought when we were, I can't remember. Oh, I was knitting hats for our two friends, wasn't I? Well, this is one of the yarns that I got at the time and I didn't use, but however, it's perfect for a hat for Dan. So sadly, I've lost, do you know with Rios, you get the tag, don't you? And then you get another little tag with the colourway name on it and number. I can't find that, but I'm sure it was 870 was the number. I'm sure it was. But this is the yarn. And it's like a really dark, sort of mossy green with little flashes of like a sort of golden colour. And there is a bit of like a bluish purple in there as well. But overall, I think it will read as like a dark mossy green, which is what I wanted. And I've started a hat now. This finding the pattern, I've got to say, was really difficult, and it took me ages. Because it's a hat for Dan, I knew that it had to be a size that will fit him because his head's on the larger size. And I don't think really large size hats are very well accommodated for in terms of patterns.
It's like shoes. We were in a shop the other day, and the maximum shoe size in TK Maxx was 11.
11, yeah.
Not that I needed any shoes, but it's always interesting.
You always have a look.
Well,
11's not even that big, is it, for a man's shoe?
Not now.
No.
Anyway.
I think an average man's foot in this country is a 10, so maybe that's why they went to 11.
People cater to the middle of the road, don't they? That's where the majority of the product is, and it seems that it's the same with hats. Yeah,
and I do think these days people are much taller than they used to be, which inevitably means that your feet are bigger, your hands are bigger, your head's bigger, so on. Anyway, I knew roughly the sort of stitch count that I needed to make this hat work for Dan, because I've knit him hats before in a worsted weight, like the Declan's hat, so I knew the sort of stitch count that I was looking at that I knew would work, and the sort of head circumference, obviously I know. And what I wanted some sort of cabley hat. I wanted something with full of cables, lots of texture, just that would really be a nice cosy sort of hat. And I really struggled to find one. However, I have managed to find one. And although I haven't started in on the cables yet, I have cast it on, and looking at the size of it, I think it's all going to be good, and the stitch count and everything. So the hat that I'm knitting is called the Irish Moss, I think you say toque, Toque, but I think you say toque, don't you? Is it a Canadian term? I think the designer is Canadian. And it's a beautiful cabled hat. It's got a 2x2 rib, which is cuffed, and then it's got these cables, which is just what I wanted. Now the pattern, it was a paid for pattern, but it wasn't very expensive. I think it was like, I don't know, it was a few Canadian dollars. I think it was only like £2 or £3, I think. It wasn't very expensive. And you get two sizes, you get a women's and a men's. The thing with the men's size is that it is a good size. And I think because it's got cables in, which are obviously cables, the gauge sort of goes like that, doesn't it, when you work cables. So I think because of that, it's got a bigger stitch count. So that, I think, is going to work. So I've cast on, and I'm just on the rib, but I just love how this yarn is knitting up. It's so pretty. You know, it's a dark colour, but I'm not finding it difficult to knit because you've got all of these little flecks of lighter colour. And it's really lovely to knit because you do get to see all of the colours. It's obviously a variegated, but I think when you get a dark variegated like this, you can get away with not worrying about whether it's going to swirl or pool because you don't really see it because it's so dark. And I think that's a great thing. So I'm just working on the 2x2 rib at the moment, which you do for quite a distance because it's a cuffed brim. The pattern called for 4mm, which I think is what I'm using. Yes. So I'm just using 4mm and the gauge is really nice, but I can tell just by the sort of stretch that it's going to fit on Dan's head, which is a plus. And the cables look really intense and interesting, which I think will be really fun. You know, it's cables and then it's moss stitch as well, and I love that look. You know, where you get a cable and then it's filled in. I can show you this actually because it doesn't give the pattern away. Isn't that lovely? So I think that's going to be really nice to do. I noticed a few comments on Ravelry about the decreases being a bit finicky, and having read it, I think basically you've got to kind of work out the pattern. You know, as you decrease, it just says, you know, pattern for X number of stitches. As you decrease, you've just got to work out where your pattern's disappearing and just follow it. But I think I'll be okay with that. There's not many rounds to the decreases, so I'm sure I'll be able to work it out. So I'm looking forward to getting into the pattern part of this. I think it'll be really fun. And I haven't done cables in ages, so that'll be a nice thing to do. And yeah, all is good with it. You know, I'm enjoying the yarn. The pattern looks like it's going to work. And I think it will just be so nice to have this super cabley hat. You know, what I wanted, and this does remind me of it, was, do you know, I say back in the day, but my mum used to knit loads of Aran jumpers, as we called them, which was basically like a cream jumper, but heavily cabled. You know, Mum always called them an Aran jumper. You did knit them with Aran weight yarn. And I wonder if traditionally they came from the Isle of Arran. Very possibly. Looks like the sort of jumpers that fishermen would wear and things like that. And, you know, she used to knit my dad loads of these jumpers. And that's what I wanted. I wanted a hat that had that look of an Aran jumper. And this does. So, fingers crossed, I think it will be really nice. What else is on your needles?
I have a finished sleeve.
You've got a sleeve.
Look at that. Oh, yes, it's marvellous. And
lovely.
They should start that as a new fashion.
Yeah.
Everyone would love that. So a bit like my brother, when I was, maybe I was 13, 14, my other brother, because I've got two brothers,
yeah,
he moved in with his girlfriend. She bought him a jacket for his birthday, I think it was one year. Anyway, it was a suede leather with tassels.
Oh, fringe.
Yeah, fringe. It was about that length. It's about that length.
Yeah, I know the sort.
Anyway, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And he went away on holiday. I think he went away for the weekend. And they said, would I look after their house for them? So I was like, yeah, no problem. So I went to look after the house, and I remember it really well because you used to have to put money into the electric meter when it ran out.
Gosh, wow.
So you'd shove it in 50p's so that you still had. So anyway, I went and looked after the house, and there on the coat hook in the corner near the door was his jacket, and he was away for the weekend. So I thought,
I'm going to wear that.
I shall pop it on and I shall go for a strut around York. So I did. So I put it on.
I can just see you thinking you were the bee's knees.
Do you know what I look like? You know the scene?
Yeah.
Is it Staying Alive?
Yes.
With John Travolta?
Yes.
The scene where he walks past Sylvester Stallone and he turns around and looks at him. That was me walking down the street.
With your fringed suede jacket on. Oh, I wish I'd seen that.
And as I walked down Coney Street, there in River Island, I saw them. The cowboy boots that were destined to be mine, until of course my brothers persuaded me to buy a Sega Master System, I think it was.
Right.
Yeah, they did.
I can't believe they had them in your size as well.
Well, maybe they wouldn't have, but when I was that age, they probably did have.
Oh, because you were younger.
So yeah, they probably would have lasted me about a year, and then I would have grown out of them anyway.
Yeah.
But
you would have looked so fabulous with your fringe jacket and your cowboy boots on.
Maybe if I'd got the cowboy
Do you know who
boots.
you would have looked like?
Who?
You would have looked like Malcolm Rodriguez.
Oh yes, what a dude. And short-term injury, he'll be back.
Short-term injury is
Yeah,
okay. He got in. He's a Detroit Lions player. Linebacker.
Yeah.
Built like this.
Yes.
Huge. But he whenever they, when they come into the changing room, he's always wearing like
something cowboyish.
Yeah. He's got the hats, he's got the boots and the jeans and he looks fantastic.
He had a hat and a potato and a watering can. This is my second sleeve. So already...
It's not very long.
En route. No, it isn't. But I'm very pleased that it is beautiful all the way around.
On the needles.
Well, it's on the needles and there's also no ladders. And
it's half the battle, I
when
think.
You first start off, that's when the ladders... For me, the ladders can form very quickly.
When you start.
And then you've got to, get it in check. But it's perfect. I mean, like I say, my ribbing, it's bang on.
Your ribbing's never been untidy.
Until I knitted with that awful yarn. This yarn is not awful.
No.
This yarn is just amazing. It's just the most gorgeous thing to work with.
Loki.
It is without doubt my favourite yarn to work with. I would not do anything other than colour work with this though.
Right.
Personally.
Yes, because it's so sticky, isn't it?
Yes.
It's just brilliant for colour work.
And I think it would be challenging, and also to me it would feel like a bit of a waste because it knits up so great. In a long chunk. It's so textural.
A long chunk.
Yes.
Very technical.
Yes. And I covered in detail on that self-contained knitter my final results for what are the best increases to do on a sleeve, and I can tell you categorically the right thing to do. I mean, you can even see it on the side. If you look down the side, it looks nice here, lumpy, nice here.
It's very true.
So down here, knit front backs.
Yeah.
Make one left, make one right, knit front backs.
Yeah.
So I know for a fact that that's the right thing to do moving forward.
So you're just going to do the next one all knit front
front backs all the way.
And you're using...
It won't matter that the sleeves aren't matched.
Nobody's going to look at your increases, I don't think, are they? If you're looking at Dan's increases on his sleeves, then you're too close.
Yes. Well, also as well, you're perhaps getting a bit too deep into the subject.
Can you imagine if someone bumped into you? Oh, let me just inspect.
That's what they do though on the sewing bee or whatever. They'd be looking very closely at the seams.
They should have a knitting bee, shouldn't they? But then you wouldn't have enough time. That's the problem.
No.
I don't think personally they give them anywhere near enough time on the sewing bee. I think they deliberately give them too little time.
Yeah.
To put pressure on them.
Well, yeah.
When they ask them to make things and they've got 3 hours or something, I'm thinking that's just the most ridiculous amount of time.
Makes more sense.
And I think it's the same on the Bake Off.
Yeah.
I don't think they're given enough time, and I think they do it deliberately. That's my theory. But yeah, you're using Knit Pro cubics, aren't you? 4mm, and you're still really enjoying the cubics.
Oh yeah. What is your final project?
So
Is this in Newcastle?
No, this one is not. I showed these last time. It's the pair of socks I'm knitting for Dan. And I finished one. And it's lovely. So these are the socks. This is the finished sock. The finished first sock. Gosh, you can see how different the yarn has knit up on the foot, can't you? Isn't that funny? I just find it really interesting. It really picks it up on the camera. So this yarn is from Pixie Yarn. The colourway is Winterfell, which is Winter Mountain, I believe. And yeah, I've finished the first sock. Now the reason, I'm not sure. I mean, it does look like it's knit up I do know why the reason it's knit up differently here is because I had a couple of breaks in the yarn and I had to cut and reattach. So that's why the sort of end bit of the toe looks different. But the gusset decreases and everything change the way that it knits up. But actually, I know it's done a swirly thing, but it's honestly totally fine. Because I've really enjoyed, and I'm really enjoying, because I'm on the second sock, I'm really enjoying knitting with the yarn. The colours are just beautiful. I remembered what prompted me to buy this skein of yarn, because I had a mini of Sophie's and I used the mini for a swatch of something, which I can't show you, unfortunately, because it's secret. But I used the mini to swatch something. And I loved the yarn so much, and I'd got that, and I could sort of compare it against her other yarns. I thought, I'm going to keep an eye on her shop, and if I notice anything that looks similar to that mini, I'm going to grab it. And this one looks really similar to that mini that I used. So that's what prompted me to buy this one. And I just remembered that the other day when I was looking at this swatch, and I was like, that's why I bought the Winterfell, because it reminded me of that mini. But yeah, I'm on the second sock now. Lovely, lovely. And it's all just going swimmingly. I'm really enjoying knitting just a plain sock. And I know I went on, didn't I, saying, oh, no, I don't like plain socks. And I know, I like a bit of texture. And then, of course, I want to knit a plain sock. But I'm conscious that I need to restock Dan's sock drawer a little bit as well, because he does wear his socks all the time, and I just can't knit them quick enough because they're so enormous. Generally, I did actually put details of how I knit Dan's socks on Instagram. I put a post there if you want to go and have a look, just with my stitch count, row numbers, all of that, because people do often ask me, how do you knit your man-size socks? So I put the details on that post if you want to see. But if I hadn't done a contrast heel, I use about 85 or 90 grams of 100 grams for Dan's socks. So it does take pretty much all of a ball of yarn. But for this one, I did have this mini, I don't know what it is, but it matches perfectly, I think, that I popped in for the heel. So yeah, I'm just happily working down the second sock. I'm just on the leg. And I think what I'm going to do is employ my 10 rows a day thing. I haven't done that for ages, actually. I've gone a bit awry. My planning entirely has gone awry, if I'm honest, since Bryony left. I don't know what's gone on, but I need to get back on it with my planning. So I will just do a few rounds on this every day, and then it grows, and then they'll be done, and then I can start another pair for him. But yeah, yarn's lovely, no complaints at all, and it's just beautiful colours, isn't it? Just gorgeous. Lovely, lovely.
It does look really nice. I mean, it's a very seasonal yarn.
It's very seasonal, because these were a Sockaween pair, so obviously I've not finished them, and I haven't finished my other Sockaween pair, but they're nearly finished, so next episode they will be finished. But it doesn't matter, the point of Sockaween is not that you finish socks, it's that you take part, so it's all good.
I think there's something really special about socks that suit the seasons. I don't know why.
Yeah, absolutely.
In weight too, because you don't want some thick, grippy, long sock in the middle of the summer.
No.
But equally, I wonder how it would feel because you do tend to, with the summery socks, they look more summery.
Yeah.
Because the colours are more...
Yeah.
And
so you do gravitate towards them in the summer, whereas these you'll gravitate
you
towards
have to wonder,
probably in the autumn.
If you knitted a sock that wasn't warm per se, but in like Christmas colours, would you reach for it in July?
No, I don't think you would.
Instinctively. I wonder if you would. Maybe if you really love Christmas. Maybe if you have...
Christmas in July, you probably would.
But also as well...
June, let's say.
Would you reach for a really summery looking sock in the middle of winter? It just would feel wrong. Or maybe that's just me.
I think you're right.
Let us know. I'd love to know.
I think if you opened your sock drawer and it was like a grey October day or November day, I don't think you'd pick out a pair that was like lilacs and lemons and pale pinks, or maybe you would.
It is funny, isn't it, how the seasons, without us even realising it, guide us in the decisions that we make. And it's sort of fun in a way, because it makes you then feel... I mean, I don't know if this is me just being stupid and overly romantic, but it makes you feel actually like, you are just another living thing on the planet rather than...
Which is true.
Well, it is true. I know that we get so, don't we, with all the technology that we've got and, the way that we live, we couldn't be more different from the animals. But actually... when it comes to those types of things, that is still a little bit of a... Because we will have done that since Ayla's time.
No.
We will have been guided by the seasons.
I do love Ayla.
Look, ladies and gentlemen, it is in fact time for the most dramatic of finales, because in 1066 the castle arrived in England, and for the next 600 years it was the seat of power. In that time, the castle, as we've discovered in this series, it's inspired so many of the innovations that we still that we still do enjoy today in the modern home. But now, though, the end is near. As civil war rips across England, it's going to be the last hurrah for the castle. This is England, a castle nation.
Have you ever thought how the world we live in today came to be? Why do so many of us live in houses made from bricks? How do most of us end up in a supermarket every week? How did some of us get the surnames we have? And why even do many modern day jobs exist?
The thing I love the most about history is we can get the answers to all this and so much more. It's always fascinated me when I've looked back through time to try and identify the things which relate to you and me today. And in this series, that's what we're going to do. We're going to try and marry the ancient with the modern. We're going to take a look at the end of the ancient world, a world that our ancestors knew so well. And we're going to tell the story of how it all started to change and become the modern world that you and I live in today.
"1,000 years ago, that is what the majority of England looked like. The houses we lived in were simple wooden structures, and the lives that most of us led were rustic and hard, to say the least. But a change was on the horizon. Technological innovation from the continent was about to burst onto the scene that would completely transform the lives of all of us.
The dawn of the castle had come, and in this series, we're going to tell its story. Where did these gigantic structures come from? Why were they invented? And why were so many built so quickly?
And then it gets really interesting, because how did this medieval structure, reminiscent of the buildings of ancient Rome, come to inspire completely the towns and cities of England, from the houses we live in to the shops we buy from?
Along the way, we're going to tell the story of the kings and queens who unsuspectingly ushered in this change. A change that would lead us on a path to something completely unexpected, to civil war and a republic. This is a truly epic tale that I can't wait to tell you. Welcome to England, a castle nation.
Welcome, everyone, to the finale of England, a Castle Nation. You join us back at Richmond Castle, the place where we visited in our very first episode, and I'm actually stood on top of its fantastic keep. If you recall, in our first episode, we discovered the story of William the Conqueror in 1066 and the arrival of the castle. For nearly 600 years, these imposing buildings exuded power and influence across the landscapes that they were built in. As each year of their life passed, their owners pioneered new technologies to make their castles feel more like a home. From proper fireplaces with an actual chimney to real beds, from glass in the windows to ensuite bathrooms. We've discovered all this and so much more in this series. Because whilst all this was going on, the growth of a new religion was taking place in the churches of the kingdom. By 1642, the castles of England were somewhat neglected. The country didn't need dominating anymore, and the bottom line was, these old places were pretty drafty and not very homely to live in. But castles are a pretty epic invention, and every good story has a beginning, a middle and an end. The castle's beginning was absolutely spectacular. We discovered that in episode 1. The middle we've been talking about all through this series, and today we're going to tell the story of the end. And I think it's only right that with something as epic as a castle, that it shouldn't go out with a whimper, but with a full-on war cry. As we left our story at the end of the last episode, Charles Stuart, King of England, had just waved his wife off from Dover. Fearful of the fight that he thought was coming, he wanted to ensure that she was safe. He'd made his way to York, and this would be his initial stronghold as he considered his options. His parliament, though, was spoiling for a fight, and for the first time in 200 years, open warfare was about to break out across the kingdom. This was the first time since the Wars of the Roses that England had seen any disturbances like this at all. To pick up the story, let's head down to the banks of the River Tees. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the place where it all started. Yes, 10 episodes ago, our story started right here. We uncovered the tale of Alfred the Great, the first great king, not of England, just of Wessex. We then uncovered the story of the Vikings and how the castle was developed in Europe to help defend against the marauding hordes as they spread all across Europe. Then the castle arrived in England in 1066 to a defeated England. For generations, the castle would then be used as the seat of power, passed from the lords of the land, from son and sometimes to daughter, down generations, nearly 600 years passed to this moment. And rather poetically, the castle's end would come in a similar way to its arrival, except this time it wasn't with one great battle, but with an absolutely huge, all-encompassing civil war. In just a few weeks, the country transformed from one of the order which had existed now since the time of Henry VIII to one of virtual anarchy. We've discovered how 90% of the population worked the fields through this series. Well, now virtually all of those men had joined up. Why did they do it? England had been pretty much a country of peace for over 100 years. No one really knew what war was like, and the facts were simple. A ploughman could make in a day at war what he could earn in a year on the farm.
There's also no doubt that people got whipped up by the excitement of things. What made the coming battle so tragic was that friends, even family, would find themselves facing off against each other on the fields of the kingdom. And whilst history remembers this battle between the royalists and the parliamentarians, half of Parliament, half of the MPs, and all of the House of Lords actually supported the king.
The first battle of the Civil War took place near a small village in Warwickshire in the winter of 1642. King Charles was on the front line, leading his supporters against an army of loyal parliamentarians. Blacksmiths and ploughmen, gentlemen and lords, lined up on each side and fought to a standstill. All thought one decisive battle would decide it, but as the sun rose on the next morning and both exhausted armies stood looking at each other, it was obvious there was no winner. Charles decided to take the high ground and push for a peace treaty, but it didn't work. In the months that followed, fighting continued all across the country. At one point, an opportunity arose for Charles to take London, but he hesitated, concerned at the loss of life that it was likely to inflict.
After 2 years, intense battles, peace looked like it could be on the horizon, because a split had formed in Parliament. Half the MPs were now actually siding with the king, and so he saw this as the moment when he could be reunited with his beloved wife. Also right at this moment, quite a lot of the people who were against the king, they defected, they came over to his side, seeing the Queen return. But Charles completely squandered it. It was an opportunity, but he didn't welcome them. Yes, he said, come and join my forces, but he gave them no respect and really made them feel pretty dreadful for what they'd done. And so no one else followed suit. And in fact, some of those people who defected to him, they went back again. Then Charles made the biggest mistake of the whole Civil War. The parliamentarians who were fighting against him, they decided that the right thing to do was to form a pact with the Scottish so that one giant army could completely crush all the royalist forces. Charles felt he had no option but to make peace with the Irish Catholics. And if you think about the reasons why this whole situation started, with the fear that the Catholics were going to come back to England and conquer by force, you can understand totally then that many of his most loyal supporters thought this is an absolute nightmare. We're going over to the other side. And the worst bit of all was, this was right at the moment when the biggest battle of the whole Civil War took place.
The tide was now turning, and in fear for his family, in the spring of 1644, Charles said goodbye to his wife for the last time. She wrote as she left him, "Adieu, my heart. If I die, believe that you lose a person who has never been other than entirely yours." Summer that year saw the greatest battle of the war take place here in Yorkshire. The parliamentarians destroyed the royalist army, largely thanks to General Thomas Fairfax and a cavalry commander called Oliver Cromwell. The man who would now bring down the monarchy, rather poetically, was descended from Thomas Cromwell, who had masterminded the downfall of the monasteries. Oliver Cromwell was no gentleman. He was a common man who had found his way into Parliament. Renowned for being stocky and balding with a thick nose, he dressed in suits which looked like they'd seen better days. His shirts were plain and often blood-stained from his morning shave. Cromwell, though, was a striking figure, being tall with a voice full of eloquent fervour. As winter dawned, the arguments moved into the Houses of Parliament. This was the moment that England's first political parties appeared. On one side stood the Independents, who were set on the absolute defeat of the king. and on the other stood the Presbyterians, who favoured a negotiated peace with King Charles. The king's final roll of the dice was a long shot. He'd been informed by the French allies of his queen that he would be well received by the Scots. So he surrendered to them after disguising himself and managing to get to one of their garrisons. But instead of receiving him well, they locked him up in a cell.
King Charles was held in Newcastle whilst the two parliamentary parties tried to agree on a deal which would keep the king on the throne but would leave him as a king in name only. He would have no power whatsoever. Charles completely refused. Now, the king was still held by the Scots, and for any deal to be done, the English Parliament needed to get their hands on him, and the Scots initially refused. But when the English offered them an absolutely staggering sum of £400,000, the Scottish accepted. The English common people absolutely hated the Scots for doing this, because since the parliamentarians had taken over and the king had been captured and deposed, taxes had gone up 10 times. They were paying 10 times more than they had before. So as Charles was taken from Newcastle down to London into the hands of the English Parliament, the common people of England flocked to his route and cheered him as he passed.
For the next 3 years, Charles was a prisoner, held in a certain amount of luxury at Hampton Court. The leaders of the parliamentarian cause, Thomas Fairfax and Oliver Cromwell, tried in vain to persuade him to remain king, but with them in actual control. Charles, of course, refused. Royalist support was growing, and he decided this was the moment to escape. It was a terrible plan, and he was caught within 48 hours. That year, though, Christmas was cancelled, and it looked very much like a second civil war was about to start.
It was all over in the blink of an eye. Scottish forces invaded England and joined forces with the remaining royalist troops loyal to the king. The Irish also started to cause trouble on their front. They hoped that this would be enough to bring the rebellious Parliament to its knees. But they had nothing to answer for Oliver Cromwell's cavalry. He led the charge once again, and he absolutely decimated everything that stood in his way. Cromwell, now completely victorious, moved to secure Parliament, and the way that he did that was they just arrested anyone who was going to be loyal to the king. That way they knew that when they brought the king for trial, which they were now going to do, his charge being making war against his own people, they knew that if they had a Parliament loyal to their cause, that there was only ever going to be one outcome. It was an unbelievable turn of events, and contradictory when you consider that the king was being charged with making war on his people, when it was Cromwell and his independents who had started the war in the first place.
On the first day of the new year, the trial was ready to begin. Whilst many objected vigorously, armed men patrolled the halls of power, and whatever the now fiercely independent Parliament wanted, it was going to take by force. 135 judges were appointed to try the king. The trial took place here in Westminster Hall. A raised dais was built at the southern end where the judges sat. Facing them was a single chair covered in red velvet. This was for the king. The sound of marching boots heralded his arrival. The king wore a black silk suit and a tall hat. Around his neck was a blue ribbon from which hung a badge of St. George and the Dragon. His beard was long, as he feared any barber offered might cut his throat. Charles was informed he was tried in the name of the people who had elected him king. No, he replied, England is a hereditary kingdom, therefore let me know by whose authority I'm called here. Court was adjourned, and as Charles was taken down to the cells, shouts rang out of God save the king from the galleries around him. As the days passed, the king constantly refused to plead guilty or not guilty. As time dragged on, his refusal to accept the power of the court was putting Parliament in a precarious position. Calls were now ringing out across Britain that the trial must be stopped.
On the 26th of January, the judges, encouraged by Oliver Cromwell, agreed that if the king refused to make a plea, that he would be sentenced to death. So they brought him back into the court and they told him, you have to plead either guilty or not guilty because you're being tried by the people of England. Right in that moment, a voice rang out from the packed spectator galleries. Not by half or even a quarter, Oliver Cromwell is a traitor. That voice was speaking up for a good proportion of the population of the country.
The king was offered one last chance to plead. He asked to be heard by the Lords and the Commons. Parliament refused and handed down his sentence. He was to be put to death by the severing of his head from his body. Charles began to panic. He always thought there would be a chance to negotiate. He asked if he could speak. He was refused and taken away.
The stage was now set for the end of an institution which had laid at the heart of England since its foundation. Charles's heir, also called Charles, he was safe. He'd been sent away to live with his sister at The Hague in the Netherlands. And his other heir, James, was with his mother, completely safe in France. But what would happen to the king? Would he be executed? Would the parliamentarians abolish the monarchy? We're going to find out what they did, how this story concludes, when I see you later on in the show with part 2. So, oh my goodness, thank you so much for watching so far. And thank you so much for watching the whole series. It has been the most, probably the biggest thing that we've ever attempted to do. And we're just thrilled that you've enjoyed it so much. And there is now just one part to go. So I'll see you later on in the show with an absolutely epic conclusion of England, a castle nation.
Oh my goodness, what a start! Will we abolish the monarchy? Will we form a republic? And most importantly, what happened to every castle that we visited this series? We shall find out all this and so much more in the second exciting part of the finale of England, a Castle Nation.
I can't wait for you to see the end.
Yeah, I know. It's very funny. No, funny's the wrong word, but it was very weird.
It's very exciting.
I had to have a costume change in a car park.
Indeed.
There wasn't really anyone around, so because initially I was going to get in the car and get changed in the back of the car, and I just thought there's no one around, so I shall just get changed here. So I did.
That's funny.
And very excitingly, little sort of piece of interesting information, there was a lovely chocolate shop at my final destination.
Yes.
So I was able to buy a lovely box of chocolates.
Yeah, and you had a coffee.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. It was very cool. All this cryptic information. Yeah. Where was I heading?
Yes.
You will find out later on in the show.
We'll tell you a bit more about the coffee shop when you've seen it.
Cool. So, yes, Loads more to come later on the show. Right now, though, it's time for a very lovely What's Off Your Needles?
Yes, indeed. I just have one thing off my needles this time.
This is a very loved thing.
It's a very loved thing. I don't have the actual item here, however.
This is a thing that's already been worn for a Halloween event.
She's already worn them. It is, of course, the Beetlejuice Mitts that I made for Bryony for her birthday. And she came last weekend, which was a few days before her birthday. So she opened some gifts with us and then some on her actual birthday back at uni. But I wanted her to open the mitts when she was with us because I knew that she'd got an upcoming kind of Halloween-y event that she'd be going to. So she did, and she absolutely loved them. So, yeah, these are the Beetlejuice mitts that I knit for her. So I showed you the yarns last time. I used a variety of yarns. There was a Cascade Heritage, was the black. There was like an undyed fingering weight yarn for the white or cream. And then a mini for the green. I don't know what the mini was. And then the purple was Yarn Smiths, which is a Wool Warehouse brand. And I didn't actually say anything about that yarn at the time, about how I felt about it, because I've used it very little. I only used it, as you saw, just a tiny bit. So I'll wait until I've actually knit with that properly to sort of give you a proper review of it. But yeah, it all just worked perfectly for the mitts. And I posted a picture on Instagram actually, and a few people have said, "Oh, have you got a pattern?" Well, I didn't have a pattern. I just made it up. I did make some notes, so maybe at some point in the future, not now, because October has gone, because it is a very seasonal thing. But maybe next year, if I feel like writing up the pattern, maybe I will do that. I don't know, or I'll use it in some format with our patrons maybe next year. But yeah, thank you to everybody who really liked those mitts, and she absolutely loved them, didn't she? And we even got her for her birthday. We got her a black and white striped t-shirt, like the suit that Beetlejuice wears, and I got her a bag from Primark, which is Beetlejuice, so she just had the whole thing on. She looked great and she loved them, and so it was worth every end that I had to weave in. Absolutely worth everything.
And hilarious that she went out in this Beetlejuice gear and she expected to, turn heads as she walked through one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world.
She'd done a face as well.
Well, you walked through York.
Yeah, nobody batted an eyelid.
Because you wouldn't. The streets of York are such a vibrant and exciting place. You'll see everything from someone in a sort of three-piece tweed suit from a landed gentry seat to, someone dressed like Beetlejuice. And, it is everyone's welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And she did her makeup, she had this really pale face and she'd put green splotches on it and everything.
The pale thing, though, is a fashion, isn't it?
Yeah, I've noticed that having a really pale face is quite a fashion, I think, with young girls.
Constantly look.
I don't know. And not wearing a lot of blusher as well.
Right.
I've noticed.
I suppose it's going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, just having foundation but no blusher, and that just, to me, it's like, gosh, you just look a bit ill.
Someone has done it and then everyone's copied them.
Maybe so. I don't understand makeup fashions. I just do what I've done for 30 years.
We haven't got the Riz. Our makeup's not chef's kiss.
Oh, I don't know.
See, we're trying to be cool and it's not working. No. Don't try and be cool. Just be you.
Just be yourself. And if that's cool, fine. If it's not cool, also fine.
Be uncool.
Be uncool, because that will become cool.
Yes. That's hilarious.
Yes.
Yeah, it was so lovely to see her open those mitts, though, because she just completely adored them. And that's the best thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you knit something for someone and it's like, oh my goodness.
She said she was going to wear them. There's a shop in York that she really loves. It's like a sort of eclectic gift shop. They sell cards and all sorts of things, don't they? But she goes in there a lot, and the woman she went in one day and she told me that she'd got on some mitts that I'd made her, just a different pair. I think it was the rainbow ones. And the woman who served her commented on them, and she's like, oh, my mum made them, because she always does that. She's really proud. And this woman said, oh, I'm a knitter, you know, they're really great. So she said, oh, I'm going to go back into that shop with all my Beetlejuice, you know, with the mitts on and a bag and everything. And she's just going to love it, that woman in the shop.
I hope she does.
So she will, won't she? Yeah.
Cool. Okay, a wonderful What's Off Your Needles.
Yes.
And now, I mean, it's weird. You know, it's been strangely it's sad to introduce the last part.
Yeah.
I've been telling so many people don't be sad, and now I feel sad because it's the final part. I think when anything is a big undertaking and takes a lot of work, when it comes to an end, it does feel a little bit sad. But, you know, I've been thrilled. We both have been thrilled by your response to all things that we've done this year, but particularly England, Castle Nation, because, you know, like Rise for the Monasteries, we've pushed things a bit, and you know, you guys seem to have really enjoyed the fact that we've sort of pushed quite a lot of knowledge down the old screen at you, and you know, told an awful lot of stories. But now it all comes to an end.
It does.
In one dramatic finale.
Yes.
But fear not.
Fear not.
As the curtain draws, it might just reopen.
You're going to love it.
This is it, the final part of England, a Castle Nation.
Welcome back to the final part of England, a Castle Nation. And you join me on the edge of a cliff. The country is about to jump off into the abyss, the complete unknown. You can't really underestimate what it must have felt like living in the country at this time. The country had known peace for 200 years. It had always had a monarchy. And suddenly, this proposition of abolishing everything and changing everything must have been absolutely terrifying, especially when the majority of people just wanted an easy and a quiet life. Rest assured, this was the most momentous moment in English history, far greater than the Battle of Hastings or the dissolution of the monasteries or any of the events that had come before then. This distinctly ununited kingdom was about to step into the abyss.
Two days after being sentenced, King Charles I was executed on a black scaffold outside that building on the left. It's the banqueting house in London's Whitehall. He faced his end with grace, laying on the block without being forced and signalling the executioner to do his work himself. As he died, a way of life died with him, one that had been administered from Scotland and England, both of which most certainly had been castle nations. But now, all that was gone. The question was, what would replace it?
But before we tackle that question, we have unfinished business, because 5 absolutely wonderful castles have provided the backdrop for this series, and I think it's high time that we revisited each of them and discovered how they met their ends. Welcome back everyone to Helmsley Castle, at the gateway to the North York Moors. Now, we visited this wonderful place in episodes 2 and 3 of this series, and as we discovered when we visited, it was built by a man called Walter Esbeck. Walter was a powerful and amazing man who helped build Revo Abbey, but unfortunately he died without leaving any heirs behind, so the castle passed into the family of one of his sisters. They were the Manus family, who over the course of the next 600 years would rise up the ranks of English aristocracy, largely thanks to the support of King Henry VIII.
As the Civil War broke out across the country, like so many castles, Helmsley was not garrisoned. That all changed as soon as the hostilities broke out. This would turn out to be Helmsley's first and last proper military engagement.
The castle was garrisoned by troops loyal to King Charles. Parliamentarian troops arrived in September 1644 and laid siege. The royalist garrison held out until November, when they ran out of food. But they surrendered with honour and they were allowed to march out of the castle. Many actually joined the parliamentarian cause.
The man in charge of the siege at Helmsley Castle was called Sir Thomas Fairfax. And now that the siege was over, he was instructed to make the castle useless. Now that doesn't mean you can't live in it. What that meant was that the walls didn't work and that the defences could never be used again by an army of any sort against the people of England. So he set about breaking the walls, blowing up towers, and actually I'm walking past, as I walk through this outer ditch, there's rubble, and the rubble that's here is from Sir Thomas Fairfax's explosions that took place up there, and all the rubble came crashing down here, that then meant the castle was completely useless and could never be used again. But he saved the Tudor mansion, and I wonder if he did that because he already knew the offer that was on its way from his superiors, because Thomas was given the chance to purchase Helmsley Castle, which he did, and he lived here for the next 39 years until it was bought by a banker from London called Charles Duncan. In 1711, Charles Duncan died, and it passed into the hands of his brother-in-law, and he moved in, but he didn't like it. So he decided that he was going to build himself a new palatial estate just a stone's throw from Helmsley Castle, and he did. And Helmsley Castle was actually used, unfortunately, as a bit of a quarry for that new house. But in about 50 or 60 years after that, Helmsley Castle passed into the hands of the government, and it remains to this day open to us all for us to come and enjoy. Welcome back, everyone, to Middleham Castle, set in the heart of the Yorkshire Dales. We visited here in episodes 4 and 5 of this series, and as we discovered in those episodes, it was built by ribald Rufus, and then it passed into the hands of the Neville family. But this became the home of a king, because King Richard III spent much of his life here, and it became known as the Windsor of the North. What makes Middleham so special is this is the moment in the history of castles that the people who were building these fantastic structures stopped thinking about them merely as fortifications and also started treating them as homes. By the time the Civil War began, Middleham was a lot like Helmsley. It wasn't actually lived in. Its owners was Edward Viscount Loftus and his wife Jane, and they were actually living in a house in Middleham itself, and they were probably renting the castle out for use by local farmers.
Even though it posed no immediate threat, in 1647 Parliament ordered Middleham to be rendered useless. But instead of its battlements being blown up, like we just saw at Helmsley, there's no record of the order ever being carried out.
The castle, instead, was garrisoned by parliamentary troops fighting against Charles I. In March 1665, word came to the garrison that royalist troops were en route. And the men here prepared for what would have been Middleham Castle's first ever proper engagement. It had never previously been attacked. But for some reason, those royalist troops setting out to come and try and take the Windsor of the North, they never got here.
In 1662, the castle was bought by the Wood family, who leased out the land and the estate to farmers. It remained in the family until it was bought by Samuel Lister, inventor of the nip comb, an ingenious tool which separated and straightened raw wool.
In 1926, the Lister family put the castle into the hands of the English state, and today it's managed by English Heritage. And whilst this was once the home of a king, and it's sort of sad that it no longer is, actually it's pretty marvellous, because thanks to the English Heritage, this is here for us all to enjoy. Middleham Castle is without doubt an awe-inspiring place. It's absolutely vital for the story of the castle, and it's also instrumental in the development of the modern English home.
Welcome back everyone to Barnard Castle. Now we visited here in episodes 6 and 7 of this series. The castle was built by Bernard Balliol, whose descendants actually went on to build Balliol College in Oxford. Eventually it passed into the hands of the English monarchy, and it found itself on the front line of the defence of Elizabeth I and the Church of England. What made our trip to Barnard Castle so important in the overall story of castles was it wasn't like all the other places that we visited, because here at Barnard Castle, instead of just having a motte and then an outer bailey, they split up the outer bailey into different wards, and that is something that carried on into the development of town planning. It's very similar to the boroughs that you'll find in English towns today. By the time the Civil War began, Barnard Castle housed a very small regiment, probably about 500 or 600 men, all loyal to the king. And it was for that reason, because it was a castle, it was manned by loyalists, that Oliver Cromwell himself arrived to take charge of the siege. Setting up his cannons all around the castle, Cromwell pummeled the walls, which had already been weakened after the rising of the North in 1569. It's no surprise that the castle surrendered pretty quickly. Oliver Cromwell took possession of the whole place, and then he sold it off to one of his friends, Sir Henry Vane. But Henry Vane didn't want to live here because he already owned a great pile of a house just up the road. He wanted to use this place as a quarry. Henry had inherited the much bigger Raby Castle just up the road. He wanted Barnard Castle as a source of stone to keep his actual home in good order. The castle remained in the estate of Raby Castle up until 1952. And then it was given to the government and eventually put into the hands of the English Heritage. Whilst it pretty much now is a gutted shell, it's a fascinating place to visit, and it's got loads of history that is just waiting to be explored. And actually, it's a wonderful place to visit because without this castle, the wonderful bustling town that surrounds the castle and is vibrant to this day, it would never have existed. Welcome back, everyone, to Bruff Castle. We visited here in episodes 8 and 9 of this series, and this spectacular place was of course built by William II of England. It was, though, inspired, like so many of the Norman castles, by the Romans, and unlike any of the other castles that we visited in this series, this castle was built right on top of an old Roman fort, which lay right here and just over there as well. What makes Bruff Castle so important to the story of castles is its rebirth after the Civil War under Lady Anne Clifford. And the question, certainly on my mind when I found out about that, was how on earth did it even happen? As we've already discovered on all our other visits this series, during the Civil War, these fortresses, these huge places that dominate the landscape, were obviously used on the front line on the battle between the Royalists and the Parliamentarians during the Civil War. But here at Bruff, that just didn't happen.
When war broke out, the castle was a wreck from the fire of 1521. Its location too was so far north, no real fighting took place here. It was then impossible for Cromwell to order the destruction of a castle that was already in ruins.
Now, he did of course outlaw the building of castles, but the owner of Bruff at that time, she just didn't care. She was Lady Anne Clifford. She was a staunch loyalist and a keen supporter of the Stuart dynasty.
When she started her renovations, Cromwell stated when challenged in Parliament, "Let her build what she will, she won't be hindered by me." The castle remained in use for the next 100 years, ending its life as the courthouse for the Manor of Bruff.
For the next 150 years, this really wonderful place was used as a quarry. Bits of it were taken away to be used on local buildings, from the local church to the local mill. But then in 1920, it came into the hands of the government, and they secured what's left of the site. But what about today? Well, it's actually owned privately, whilst it's looked after by English Heritage, who looked after all of the castles that we've seen in this series. It's actually owned by the Beckwith family, who actually have a farm very close by. You can buy ice cream, you can even buy some milk here, and it's open for free for us all to enjoy. But really, the lady we've got to thank for this wonderful place still being here is the spectacular Lady Anne Clifford. But what about Richmond? Well, its sort of future after its initial founding is nowhere near as exciting as any of the other castles we've visited this series. His high point very much came in 1294 when it was owned by King Edward I, famously known as the Hammer of the Scots. He performed renovations which very much created the castle that we see today. He inserted a vault into this wonderful keep. We've made our way into Scotland's Hall, and we discovered this and learnt a little bit of its story in the first episode of this series when we first came to Richmond Castle. And King Edward, when he got control of Richmond, he completely renovated this building, and the building that we see today very much is the one which was built by Edward I. Not only, though, did he renovate and make this much larger, this Scotland's Hall, the main meeting hall where people used to eat,
But he also extended the range of apartments which attached directly to the hall, which is where the constable of the castle and his family used to live. But as we have learnt throughout this series, whilst castles inspired the modern home, they were drafty places built for war, and their days were always numbered. By the time of the Civil War, this once powerful citadel, home to Alan LaRue, knight of William the Conqueror, was in ruins. It was completely useless to anyone. And for the next 300 years, it became more and more of a sort of picturesque, romantic ruin. When it was painted by Turner, it became a hugely popular tourist destination. By 1908, the castle had found its way into the hands of the government, and this barrack block was built to house troops from the Northern Territorial Army, which for a while was actually commanded by the founder of the Boy Scouts movement. In 1984, the castle and all its grounds actually came into the ownership of English Heritage. And in essence, that actually concludes our story. Except it doesn't. Because in 1649, as the axe fell on Charles I's neck, no one had a clue what would happen next. When the monasteries were got rid of under Henry VIII, society still held together. The power just shifted completely to these spectacular castles. But now, as the world of the castles disappeared into the mists of time, no one had a clue what would happen next, including the men who had empowered it. When the fog of civil war lifted, a new world gradually started to appear where anything seemed possible. As the new republic awoke, it emerged into a land of supposed opportunity where perhaps all property would be shared and everyone would have a vote. But the revolutionaries who had fought to overthrow power now had it for themselves, and they weren't going to share it with anyone. And where would that power now be based? In the stately homes of England. This is the fascinating story of the English stately home, and it's set against the emergence of a brave new world, one in which we all live today. This is the story that I'm going to tell you in 2025. Welcome to Britain, the stately era.
What an end. And what a beginning.
Are you excited?
Oh my goodness. I mean, folks, that music.
The music.
My brother.
Isn't it fantastic?
I just love him so much. He's so funny because, you know, I go to him and I'll say, this is what we need. And it's like, I don't think I can help this time. And
then he sends through a load of stuff.
And then it comes through
what?
And you're like, what? So I said, that was brilliant. He goes, oh, you sure? I was like, yeah. Can we use that one? Yeah, of course you can. Oh, by the way, the guy who arranged that does all Toy Story's music. Sorry, Pixar. I'm like, what? So it was a job that my brother worked on where it was an orchestra. I can't remember where I said it was now. It was somewhere European.
It was.
Anyway.
Budapest.
It was a Budapest Symphony Orchestra playing that particular theme.
Yeah.
I mean, just like...
It's just beautiful, isn't it? Go back and listen to it again.
It is a grower.
It really is.
I can't stop singing it in my head.
Yeah.
What a theme, though. Britain, the stately era. If you love Downton Abbey...
Stately houses, everybody.
If you love Downton Abbey, you've come to the right place.
So excited.
And, I mean, there's just so much. There's so much to get into. It is, though, the start of today's world. You know, this is it now. The old world has gone. And from the ashes, because it literally is ashes, comes a rebirth. And that rebirth very much was within those stately homes, because it was still the lords and the ladies of the country who were leading the fashions. And to this day, you know, we still go. And speaking of to this day, that place where we filmed that bit of the trailer is a spectacular stately home just down the road from us. And within the grounds of that stately home, they have like a business centre.
Yeah, it's where the stables were.
Yeah.
They've converted the stables into a business centre.
So there's lots of little businesses in there.
Yeah.
And one of them is a chocolate shop.
Yeah.
That it was in Richmond and it's now grown.
Yeah.
And they have two now. And what's so lovely is we went into that chocolate shop when it first opened.
We did, in Richmond, yeah.
Great coffee, great chocolates.
Yeah.
To start with, it was like a proper old-fashioned sweet shop as
It
well.
was.
And then it changed to more of a sit-down coffee shop.
And chocolates, yeah.
And so there's this lovely chocolate shop. I mean, how great is that?
Yeah.
You know, go to a place to do a bit of filming and,
Go and have a lovely... And they do, like, sandwiches and, you know, you could get some lunch there easily as well.
You can go for a lovely walk through the grounds.
Yeah.
Capability Brown.
They are.
Oh, yes. So Chatsworth.
Yeah. It's privately owned.
Yeah.
You know, it's not open to the public generally. However, we have been inside it.
We were shown around by the Marquis himself.
Marquis of whatever he is.
Zetland. And how amazing is this? I've always wondered, Zetland, what's that about? Well, Zetland, it was the original name of Shetland. Shetland is, of course, an island in the Outer Hebrides.
Yes. Yeah. But they open their house just for a few days every year, and you have to apply and get tickets. Round about September, I think. I think it's September sometime. And you can apply and get tickets. I don't think it even cost anything.
No, it's free.
I'm sure it didn't cost anything.
Come on.
And they just
I'll show you round.
Yeah, they just let in small groups. So we went a few years ago now, isn't it?
It's crazy.
And got shown around, like Dan said. And honestly, the best thing, it was beautiful, but the best thing about it was, and this is going to sound random, right? But I needed the loo. So I asked, there was like a lady that was sort of following him around.
Yeah.
I don't know whether she was the housekeeper. So
Mrs. Patmore.
Yeah, sort of like a Mrs. Patmore. No, not Mrs. Patmore.
No, it's the other lady.
Mrs. Hughes.
Yeah.
So I just sort of whispered in her ear as we were moving through the rooms. I said, oh, can I go to the loo? And she says, yes, not a problem. She took me down this corridor to this other place, and I went in the most beautiful toilet I have ever been in.
It's bigger than our house.
In my life, right? Went through this beautiful door into a room, and it was sort of like, you know, the sinks were there, but it was, you know, just beautifully like wallpapered and everything pristine. And then you went through another door where the loo was, and I came out and I said, oh my goodness, that's the most beautiful toilet I've ever been in.
And that is the story we'll be telling you next year.
Not the
story
toilet.
of the greatest toilets in the history of the world.
No, but just the experience of going into one of these big houses that... No, it's not like the ones that are open to the public. You know, this was just a home, and it was just fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's brilliant. So that's it. England, a castle nation, is over. Britain, the stately era, has been born. So what happens next? Well, one of the first shows, in fact, the first show that we developed when this all became our job was the quiz show just for knitters, although it has now become more the quiz show for all the family with our Trivial Pursuit questions. We developed that show, and now it's time for that show to also come to an end. as we enter into a new chapter of Bakery Bear Productions, now that the shackles have sort of been removed from K&I and we can, in effect, do anything that we want to do with regards to the shows that we produce, it's time now, as I say, to end Knit or Forfeit. So we're going to go out in style with one final round.
Yes.
That round will be a test, and the test is this. Have we learnt anything from our Knit or Forfeit quizzes?
Yeah.
Every question that we ask will have been asked before on one of the episodes of the show. So have we learnt anything? It will be the ultimate test. So 7 questions all on knitting, but then, no, it's 6 questions all on knitting, is it? Because it's 7, 8, 9...
6 and then 3 and then 1.
Yeah, so 6 questions on knitting, 3 general knowledge, and then the speed round at the end. Boom. And then at the end, we will know who the ultimate champion is, who gets to keep the trophy forever. Well, it's not a trophy, it's a crown.
Who gets to keep the crown forever.
Keep the crown forever, and then that will be it, the end of Knit or Forfeit. But what we're going to do is, rather than leave you waiting a whole year to find out what replaces Knit or Forfeit, in our Christmas special, which is out on the 13th of December, we will be doing a one-off special episode of Knit or Forfeit's replacement, a Christmas special.
Yes.
It's very, very different, not anything like that. It'd be
No.
So something completely brand new, so don't think it's going to be another quiz show, because it's not.
No, totally different.
It's time for new, exciting, wonderful things, and what better way to start that off than at Christmas?
Yep.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is it. It's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits!
So, we've spoken a little bit about Christmas, haven't we, there?
Yeah.
And I think that now is the moment when I should inform you that in our next show, we will be unveiling the trailer for the Bakery Bears Advent Calendar 2024.
Yes, indeed.
So that's next time. That's very, very exciting. So, Knit or Forfeit finale, and, oh yes, we're going to find out what the theme is, what's going on, all the wonderful things for this year's Bakery Bears Advent Calendar. So can't wait for that. Did you hear our last radio show was all about creativity? People seem to have really enjoyed it. So you can go and listen to that now. And then we've got a new one coming out next week, and that's all about our perfect weekend.
Our perfect weekend.
If there was no boundaries, if we could step in a teleportation system and 1 minute be one place and then the next minute be somewhere else, what would? And we're not going to tell each other what ours are. We're going to reveal them on the show.
Yeah.
Kay has some yarn and things to talk about.
Yes, so I've got the rest of the Fiesta yarn that I've ordered. And I ordered a few. So when I got the pink one that you saw me knitting, I also got this one, which is, it's colour number 18. And I know that this one was called Watermelon. And isn't it just fantastic? What do you need it? Why did you do that?
Because I carried a watermelon.
Oh, you carried a watermelon. Honestly. So it's this sort of fabulous green with pink and little bits of blue as well. So I thought that I would make these and use the same pink as the contrast. Fantastic. And then I ordered a few others. When I got those and I started knitting the pink ones, I'm like, I really like this. I'm going to get some more before it all sells out. So I then got this one, which might be my next cast on. This is number 16. I can't remember the colourway names, but if you go onto Wool Warehouse, you'll see. I don't know if this one was Forest something, but it's number 16. Oh, and it's all the greens. So it's all these shades of green with a little bit of blue. And then I got a red. The red is number 12. Oh, and I thought, wouldn't they make the most fantastic Christmas socks? So that might be my next cast on. And then I got this one. This one was called Something and Berries. I forget the name, but this is number 19. So this is like a grey and sort of a pinky reddish speckle. Super lovely. And again, I thought the red would go beautifully with that. And then I got this one, and I think that this one is sold out. This one's called Fairy Tale. It's number 22. So it's another speckly colour. This time it's more autumnal, I think. Beautiful. And I got this blue to go with this. This is number 6. And I just thought they look gorgeous together. And then the last print one I got was this one, which is very spring-like. And was this something like blossoms and something? I forget. It's number 17. So this one is like golden yellow and sort of like a corally orange speckles. And I got a brown because I thought that would look fantastic for autumnal socks, wouldn't it? And the brown is number 8. So lots to go at there for fabulous DK socks. I'm obviously going to have a little DK sock moment when I'm knitting all these up. Some of this will be for Dan. I will definitely knit Dan a pair. Bryony wasn't bothered because she's very sort of princess-like with her socks. She likes her sock yarn to be really soft, you know, so the kind of standard 75-25 fingering that's really soft. And she felt this when she was here and she's like, oh no. So that's great though, because it means more for me and Dan, which is lovely. And this is, I don't think I told you the price. It's £2.30 a ball. So for £4.60, you know, you'll need 100 grams to knit a pair. But for £4.60, you've got a fantastic pair of socks and had the best time knitting. So is that not just brilliant? You know, it's just, I think that's great. I have noticed in one of these, I can see a knot sort of quite early on. I haven't had any knots in the skein, you know, the ball that I'm knitting with right now. But, you know, you've got to expect the odd knot, haven't you? Is that one a knot? No, that's just a bit of fluff. But yeah, like I say, I'll be doing a review on this yarn a bit later when I've knit with it a bit more, you know, and I can give a proper full opinion.
Forgot to say, promised you there would be information on how you can win prizes at home at the start of the show. That will be in Knit or Forfeit. We will be asking you a question. You will have the opportunity to answer that if you get it right. You will have the opportunity, if you are just a viewer of the show, to win a pattern. If you're a patron, you can win a free month's subscription. Amazing. So that is it,
Very
folks.
cool.
And I mean, what a cool run into the end of the year we've got, because we've got the finishing off the last ever Knit or Forfeit, which is going to be epic. Prizes for you guys at home if you enter and you win. But then the final show of the year is going to be something completely
different and
completely new that will then be back for a little series next November.
Yes.
And then the show after that, Kay's brand new 2025 show begins.
Yeah.
That is on, I think it's the 3rd of January.
Yes.
So the 3rd of January, new year, boom, Kay's off, brand new show.
Yeah.
Bring it on, baby. Folks, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, everybody.
What a show it's been.
Yes.
And we will see you in 2 weeks with more.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Sitting and knitting, it's Dan and Kay, the bakery players. Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay, the bakery players. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle while watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what's in your oven, or maybe a shawl you'll want to wear. So sit yourself right down and watch Dan